Somewhere between your last paycheck and your last grocery run, a few $100s quietly disappeared, and you never got a receipt for where it went. That's not a feeling, that's math. The average household now spends around $81,540 a year just to function, a jump of 4.7% from last year alone. Paychecks, meanwhile, crawled forward by 2.9%. Do that subtraction, and you get the real story of this decade. The cost of living is sprinting, and income is limping behind it, further every single year. Inflation gets blamed for all of it, but inflation is only half the picture. The other half is quieter and far more deliberate. Pricing models built by people who studied exactly how much friction a human being will tolerate before they stop paying attention to their own spending. Fees get renamed. Subscriptions get bundled, then unbundled, then bundled again under a different name. Nothing about this is accidental. Habits that felt harmless 5 years ago are now small, repeated leaks in your financial hull, and most of them are invisible until you actually sit down and add up a full year at once. This is a walk through 12 of those leaks, rebuilt for where prices actually sit heading into 26, so you can see precisely where your money is going and start plugging the holes before they sink you. Start with the one nobody wants to admit to: the daily specialty coffee run. A custom espresso drink in most cities now lands close to $8.70. Brew that same quality of coffee at home, and you're paying closer to 40 cents a cup, even using beans most people would call premium. A 5-day-a-week habit at the counter quietly pulls over $2,200 a year straight out of your account. Now stretch that same amount across a career and drop it into an investment account earning 8% annually. Give it 30 years. That habit, reversed, becomes roughly $260,000. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between retiring comfortably and retiring anxious. Nobody hands you that math at the counter because the entire business model depends on you never doing it. The transaction is designed to feel small. A swipe, a tap, 3 seconds. Precisely so the total never registers as one number in your head. Buy now, pay later apps run on the same blind spot, just dressed up as a feature instead of a flaw. Apps like Payloom, Splitties, and QuarterPay let you break a $200 purchase into 4 $50 installments, and something strange happens in your head the moment you do that. The real price stops registering. Your brain processes $50 today completely differently than it processes $200 today, even though they're the exact same transaction wearing a different outfit. Studies on these platforms show the average user ends up spending close to 38% more than they would have if they'd had to hand over the full amount at checkout. The business isn't really selling convenience, it's selling missed payments. Nearly 4 in 10 users have already been hit with a late fee, and those fees are where the real profit lives, not the interest-free installments plastered across the ads. The oldest rule in personal finance hasn't gone anywhere. If you can't pay cash for it today, you can't actually afford it. You're just renting the illusion that you can, one payment reminder at a time. Then there's the yearly phone upgrade, which has quietly become the most expensive habit that changes nothing about your life. A new flagship phone now runs around $1,300, and the honest truth is that it will not make your texts arrive faster or your social feed load smoother than the 2-year-old model sitting in someone else's pocket. What's actually driving the upgrade cycle is intentional battery degradation through software updates and repair costs set high enough to make "just buy new" feel like the rational choice, even when it isn't. Manufacturers know that a marginally sharper camera lens is enough to trigger millions of upgrades, because the decision is emotional, not technical. Buy 1 generation behind or go certified refurbished, and you get identical daily performance while dodging hundreds of dollars in depreciation that the manufacturer is counting on you to eat every single cycle. Subscription mystery boxes deserve a mention here too, because they've turned a simple psychological trick into a multi-billion-dollar industry. You pay a set fee every month for a box of surprise items: skincare, snacks, gadgets. And the thrill you're actually paying for is the 30 seconds of anticipation before you open it. That thrill almost never matches what's actually inside. These companies price every box to guarantee themselves a healthy margin, meaning you're paying retail prices for things a stranger picked out on your behalf, based on inventory the company needed to move, not on what you actually wanted. Canceling is deliberately made annoying. Extra clicks, hidden menus, a phone call instead of a button, banking on the fact that most people will just let the charge keep hitting their card while the unopened boxes stack up in a closet, a physical monument to money you didn't mean to spend. If there's a specific product you actually want, buy that product directly. You'll always come out ahead, and you'll never have a drawer full of regret to show for it. Now think about food delivery apps, the ones that reshaped how an entire generation eats dinner. Platforms like SwiftBite and Table to Go charge restaurants a commission of somewhere between 18 and 32% per order, and restaurants don't quietly absorb that cost. They build it straight into your menu price, right there in plain sight, disguised as inflation instead of what it actually is. Order through the app, and you're typically paying around 27% more than you would ordering the exact same meal at the counter. That's before delivery fees, service fees, small order fees, and the tips stack on top of each other like a tower built specifically to obscure the real total. A meal that costs $13 in the restaurant can hit $24 by the time it reaches your door, an 85% markup to avoid a 10-minute drive you were probably capable of making. Make that a weekly habit, and you're looking at roughly $1,640 a year spent purely on convenience. Invest that same amount annually at 8% for 2 decades, and it grows into something close to $82,000, sitting quietly in an account instead of vanishing into a delivery bag. The loyalty subscriptions these apps push, the ones that waive delivery fees for a flat monthly rate, exist for one reason: to keep your thumb moving on autopilot so you never stop to check the math on any single order. Fast food used to mean cheap and fast. Now it's just fast. A combo meal at a place like Burger House now runs $12 to $16. A bowl at Fresh Grain easily clears $15. Even the old, reliably cheap chains are pushing past $11 for a basic order that used to be a $5 afterthought. Menu prices across the fast food industry have climbed nearly 58% since 2019, with a full 10% of that jump landing in the last year alone. Once cheap is gone, you're left paying casual restaurant prices for heavily processed food that works against your health instead of your budget, a genuinely rare combination of financial and physical downside. For that same $15, you can build a real meal at home with fresh protein and vegetables in under 20 minutes, no drive-through line required. A regular fast food habit drains $3,000 to $5,000 a year from the average person's account, and it does it by exploiting the one thing habits are built on: not thinking about it, meal after meal, year after year. Buying a brand new car might be the single most predictable way to set money on fire, and yet millions of people do it every year expecting a different outcome. The instant you drive it off the lot, roughly 20% of its value disappears, gone before the paint has even had time to catch actual road dust. On a $50,000 vehicle, about average right now, that's $10,000 gone before you've even merged onto the highway. By the 12-month mark, depreciation reaches 26 to 31%, so your $50,000 purchase is suddenly worth closer to $35,000. Finance most of it, and you're instantly underwater, owing more than the car is worth while stuck paying interest on a shrinking asset, a genuinely brutal financial position to be in voluntarily. The real sweet spot sits with vehicles around 5 years old. They've already absorbed the steepest part of the depreciation curve, but still have 100,000 reliable miles ahead of them, all the utility with none of the cliff. With average new car payments now near $760 a month, choosing a dependable used vehicle instead frees up close to $9,000 a year for actual wealth building. It's not an accident that most self-made millionaires drive practical, several years old cars. They understand a vehicle is transportation, not a personality trait. And they've made peace with that distinction long before their first million arrived. Sit-down restaurants have quietly flipped their own value proposition upside down, with menu prices up nearly 38% since 2019. A basic burger at a casual spot now runs $17 to $23, and once you add a drink, an appetizer, and a tip, one person alone is looking at a $42 tab for what used to be an easy $20 outing. Dinner for two with drinks easily crosses $150, a bill that would have been half that just 5 years back, for a meal that, by most accounts, hasn't actually gotten better. As prices climbed, portions shrank and service slowed, thanks to an industry still short-staffed at every level, from the kitchen to the host stand. The real damage hides in the drink menu. A $15 cocktail built on $2 of actual ingredients, a $5 soda that costs pennies to pour, margins so wide they're doing most of the heavy lifting on the restaurant's bottom line. A special occasion dinner is still worth every cent. That's not what's being questioned here. A weekly habit of casual dining out is not worth it, though. A family spending $220 a week there burns past $11,000 a year, when that same family could eat exceptionally well at home for a fraction of the price and feel noticeably better doing it. Streaming was supposed to be the thing that finally killed the overpriced cable bundle. Instead, it quietly rebuilt it, piece by piece, until we ended up right back where we started with extra steps. A standard plan on one platform now runs $16. Another sits at $14.50, a third at $18.50, a fourth at $16.50. And once you stack on 3 or 4 more to catch every show and every live sports package, you're paying well past $110 a month for content that used to come in one bundle for less. That fragmentation isn't an accident. Studios split shows and sports rights across separate apps on purpose, because a household juggling 5 subscriptions spends more in total than a household with one all-inclusive package ever did. The average home now carries close to 5 active streaming services, most of them barely opened in a given month, quietly renewing in the background regardless. Here's how to actually beat it. Pick one platform at a time, binge everything you want, cancel it the same week, and rotate to the next. You get access to the exact same library of content for under $25 a month, and the platforms hate this strategy precisely because it works. Weddings have become one of the most common ways for 2 people to start a life together already buried in debt, which is a strange way to begin what's supposed to be a partnership. The average American wedding now costs close to $38,000, and couples are draining savings accounts or opening credit lines to pay for a single 6-hour party right before entering the exact life stage where financial stress is the #1 driver of conflict between partners. The wedding industry runs on a simple trick. Prices for venues, florists, and photographers quietly multiply the moment a vendor hears the word wedding instead of corporate event, sometimes doubling for the identical service. And the data backs up the risk. Couples who spend heavily on oversized weddings report notably higher divorce rates than couples who keep it under $12,000, a correlation that should give anyone planning a 6-figure celebration real pause. A smaller, more intentional ceremony protects the actual marriage that follows it, because no photo album has ever made a mortgage payment, no matter how beautifully it was shot. Travel is genuinely one of the best investments a person can make in their own life. Funding it on high-interest credit is where the trouble starts, turning something enriching into something that costs you long after the memory fades. Airfare is up roughly 35%, pushing a basic week-long trip for 2 comfortably past $4,300, while the average theme park family vacation now sits closer to $11,000 for a single week. For a middle-income household, 1 week of luxury travel can eat up nearly a quarter of their entire annual take-home pay, an enormous share for 7 days. And with most Americans admitting they couldn't comfortably absorb a surprise $1,000 expense, financing a vacation just trades 1 week of relaxation for months of quiet financial dread once the trip ends and the statements start arriving. Shift toward road trips, short-term rentals with a kitchen, and free local walking tours, and you keep the part of travel that actually matters, the experience, the change of scenery, the memory, without dragging a 5-figure balance home with you as a souvenir. And finally, the brand name tax, The invisible fee you pay every time you reach for the recognizable box instead of the plain one sitting right next to it on the same shelf. Name-brand detergent, cereal, cleaning products, and over-the-counter medication are frequently made in the exact same factories as their store-brand counterparts, using the same active ingredients at roughly half the price, with the only real difference being the packaging design and the marketing budget behind it. Making the full switch to store brands across a normal weekly shop saves the average household close to $2,600 a year, with zero real difference in quality or performance. That same markup hits its most extreme form in designer fashion, where people happily hand over $1,000 for a plain cotton hoodie for no reason beyond the logo stitched onto it. Real money, earned with real hours of your life, traded for a feeling that fades by the second wash. So here's the question worth sitting with before you keep scrolling. Out of everything you just heard, which one hit closest to home? Is it the coffee, the car, or something buried on your subscription list that you forgot you were even paying for? Drop it below, because naming it out loud is usually the first real step to actually fixing it. Every leak on this list runs on the same three things: convenience, status, and a payment method smooth enough that you never feel it leave your account. None of these habits are evil on their own, and nobody's suggesting you cut them all out overnight. What's dangerous is doing them without ever running the numbers, letting small, frictionless charges quietly decide your financial future on your behalf. Real financial freedom isn't about deprivation. It's about waking up from autopilot long enough to ask whether each recurring charge is building your future or someone else's. If this broke down something you'd never actually calculated before, hit subscribe, drop a like, and share it with the one person in your life who needs to see this math too.